Oh my gosh.
like several.
Forever.
Yes, in
A
this work,
lot.
a lot, because she has a passion for helping people post divorce, right? And the major question of should I stay or should I go, right? And so you
Hmm.
written a book
I
that's
have.
the D word, which everyone get your minds out of the gutter. We're talking about divorce.
Well, it's actually the decision, right? So the D word
Yes, yes.
play on the two words, right?
It's
It's
the
the
play, yeah.
decision. It's making the ultimate decision about your marriage. So yes. So which D is it? And it's
Which
not
D is
not the dirty D.
not that, well,
Not
it
this
is
time.
a dirty D though, right? And
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
there's too that whole sense of um it being a dirty word, right? And that whole sense of shame surrounding the experience, the whole sense of like, oh, should I stay or should I go? And this real impression, I know there was this sense of like, people just don't take their marriages seriously, right? Everybody's
Ugh,
supposed to throw everything away now. And it's like, man, the people I know
Lord.
who have been through a divorce, years of trying to
Years.
make it work,
That's
years of
right.
changing themselves trying to make it work. I mean, years and years and years and years and years. Has that been your experience as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, most people struggle with the question, should I stay or should I go, for 4 to 5 years. I mean, nobody wants to get divorced.
Mhm.
Nobody comes to this decision sort of blithely and, without absolutely agonizing over this for trying, like agonizing over it, trying to make it work, agonizing over it, trying to make it work. Most of us, 69 around percent of divorces are initiated by women. And we are the ones that have been making the therapy appointments, begging our spouses to go to therapy, bending ourselves into pretzels to try to become, who and what they want us to be. And when we realize that we are the only ones trying, we're the only one putting in the effort at a certain point, and when we start to get educated on what's actually happening in the marriage, when we end up in communities like yours or like mine, and we hear other people's stories and we recognize that, oh, this is actually not a me problem. I'm doing everything I can. And we start to get educated on the dynamics of abuse and narcissism and relationship inequity. And then it's that at that point that we go, oh, this is not, I've done everything I possibly can.
And I just think there's this sense of like, well, there wasn't enough date nights, or they got
Oh, give me a
frustrated.
break.
The socks up off you had to pick the socks up off,
Right. Sure.
or, you're
Yeah.
mad about the dishes. And it's like, that is
Oh, yeah.
not the conversations I've had.
Oh, no. I mean, listen, no. First of all, no. Well, first of all, the conversations that we have about the dishes or the socks are not about the dishes and the socks. Matthew Frey wrote his amazing, viral article about it, and then the book. And I think, he just nailed it, right? It's not about the dishes. It's about respect. It's about partnership. It's about being equal partners on the playing field of this relationship. Um, and women overwhelmingly get really exhausted. Marriage benefits men and exhausts women. And that's just a statistical fact. They did a study years ago and they determined that the happiest heterosexual people on earth are married men, and then single women, and
Mhm.
then married women, married men. I mean, married. Sorry, what is it? Married
Married
men,
men, single
single
women,
women, single
single
men, and
men,
then
married
married
women.
women are the least happy. And married women are the least happy. Married men are the most happy. It couldn't get any clearer than that. And so when it is about the socks, it's not about the socks. It's not about the dishes, right? And a lot of that is about the cultural, the way that we, um, socialize men and boys. And then there's the abuse and narcissism piece, which is so prevalent. And, I just, and again, partly because of the way we socialize men and boys. I think a lot of, narcissists are, made most often by this narcissistic wound, and the trauma that we inflict on our children by telling them to shut up, by telling them to grow a pair, right? Like, these are the traumas that we inflict on boys that creates more and more narcissism, abusers, entitlement, suppressed emotions, right? We don't allow men to be fully self-expressed from boyhood, and it's terrible. It's bad for everybody.
And I'm glad you said that, because I think I've been asked before in my line of work, like, are you a man hater? And I was like,
oh, all the time.
Like, I am extremely happily married.
Right.
A son who I am so close to, even though he's, a teenager now, right? We're so close, right? And it's just like, why would I want him to fail? Like, why would I want a world hard on him?
That's right.
But I'll tell you a story, Kate, and I didn't think about this interview. And I don't always do this. A lot of times I do things for him. But one of the things that this morning, I asked him to put my water on the kettle. I was sitting there reading a book before school, and I asked my son to go put my water in the kettle for my coffee. And I want him to think that's normal. Like, I do.
That's right. Good for you.
Trying to do the right thing by, like, I need to be needed. I'm going to be everybody's servant. And it's like, this whole thing that we've seen in marriages play out. My goal is to be so selfless that other people get to be selfish, and then we wonder what's gone wrong.
Right. That's right. That's right. And, we use this as relationship currency. I mean, part of the problem that one of the things that I want to impress upon women, and this is because of our socialization, right? We say, we use our nurturing and caretaking as relationship currency in the early stages of the relationship. And then we get pissed off when they're expecting that forever, or when, we have babies and then we don't want to do it anymore because what we really want is a partner. Well, I've been your mother for 5 years. Is it any wonder he's like confused and pissed off? And we just sort of like assume like, oh no, now it's going to change because we have a baby and we need a partner. But like, we've never designed that aspect of our relationship, because I used my, like, oh, I'm going to clean his apartment. I'm going to organize things. I'm going to make sure, his bachelor pad is now like functioning as a home, and all of these things that I'm going to provide that are what we draw them in with. And then we don't want that anymore. And we wonder why they're pissed off.
And you're in a relationship with a narcissist or toxic person or extremely selfish person. We're not saying it's your fault at all.
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
right. No, it's important to, no, you're right. You're right. And I'm glad you said that. Right. I'm talking sort of like broad swaths, like overall, we have to change the way that we function in relationships, and
teach our dog, and teach our daughter, and teach our sons.
Listen, I've got an 18-year-old boy in the other room, and, watching him and his current relationship is like, and they've been together like a year and a half, and they're so in love, and they've been through a lot together, and they keep navigating shit together. And, he has me as a mom, her mom is a therapist, right? Like, you've got two really emotionally intelligent teenagers. And they're like doing it. They're doing it, and they're doing it differently. And I have so much hope for the kids that we're raising. But the only way we get to change this for our kids is to change it for ourselves, and this is the, this is what I talk about in this book a lot is, we got to think about the relationship blueprint that we're handing our children. And when we're staying in toxic, abusive, narcissistic relationships for our kids, what we're doing is setting them up to repeat the cycle and to have this exact relationship. If you don't want this relationship for your children, then you've got to show them something different.
100%.
And even if that means like, look, I'm not remarried. I've been divorced for 15 years. I am not remarried. I'm not particularly, interested in that. And, if someone amazing came into my life, like, absolutely. I don't know about marriage, but whatever. I am not repartnered.
Yes.
And so it doesn't mean, and a lot of people are like, oh God, I might be alone forever. And my response to that is like, yeah, you might, because you might get to a point where you're not willing to settle for anything less than extraordinary for yourself. And if extraordinary doesn't show up, then you'll actually be fine. Right? I'm fine.
Yeah. When you said you might be alone forever, my first thought was, but it might be like this forever. Right. And if you really are in that type of relationship, right. And it's like, don't assume it's going to change, right? If you've got the data that it's been 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years, if you were in
Vegas, it's not going to change.
Right? Like, let's put $100,000 on it. Would you bet that they're going to change? No, you would not. We lined up 1,000 people. It's been this way for 10 years. Are you going to bet that it's going to change for the next 10 years? That's a bad bet. Nobody would make that bet.
That's right. That's right. And we have enough statistics, like besides that data, we also know that they can't change.
Yes.
Right. So anyway, but go on.
Well, and I do want to say a point that I know you and I agree on. And there's this sense that like, not everyone's good at baseball. Not everyone's good at playing piano. Not everyone's good at singing, but we assume everyone's good at marriage.
Yeah. Right. Right.
That's
right.
Like,
that's a really interesting way to put it. And I hadn't really thought about it in those terms, right? It's like, well, and it's like, you wouldn't just like get up and get onto the baseball field without ever having learned about it, watched YouTube videos, read a book, practiced, right? Like all of those things. You would never do that for anything else. And yet we just sort of think that this is supposed to be something natural that we're all natural, like you said, naturally good at. But like, you don't have to be the best. You don't have to be a pro. But there's enough information out there that if you're not seeking it, if you're not actively trying to learn how to be in a relationship in a healthy way, then like, I don't know what to tell you. I've had so many clients, and I'm sure you have too, whose husbands have been like, you knew who I was when you married me. I haven't changed in 20 years. And you're like, they're like, that's the problem.
Right? Well, exactly. And it's like Lundy Bancroft, I'm sure you're familiar with him. We had a podcast interview, and basically the idea is, how do you know if he's going to change? He actually will.
Yes.
He actually will. Like, you will see signs like
that. Right. And he has this wonderful checklist about it and all of that. But like, right, like about like if he's really changing. But it's actually true, right? How do you know if he's going to change? Has he changed?
Yeah.
Has he changed? Right. For the better in ways that are right.
Yes. And not for a moment to regain control.
That's the, that's the most confusing thing, I think, because people are like, but he has for like 3 weeks. He was the greatest guy in the world. Right. And as you said, that was what that tells you is that they're actually capable of change. They know the behaviors. I don't think they're capable of, they're not capable of the actual internal shift.
Soul shift.
Soul shift. They're not capable of not being narcissists. I mean, that's the thing, right? And so, but they do know the behaviors. They do. Because they put them on for you at the beginning. They put them on for you every time you say you're going to leave, but then they revert back. So, my ex said to me, about 2 weeks after I finally was like, I'm done. And this is after 10 years. And he said to me, Kate, I'm so sorry. I just never thought you'd leave. And I was like, So you knew that what you were doing, you now admit that everything you were doing was abusive and terrible.
And you knew it,
You
right?
knew it. You knew it.
Yep.
Would have stopped it. You opted not to stop it because you thought I would never leave. So you thought you could continue to get away with it. Like, that's what he said to me. And it's like one of the most revealing and honest things I think he ever said.
Yeah. So what do you think in the D word as far as the decision making? Like there is someone who's like trying to figure out what their next big decision should be. Like, what are some pieces of advice that you think provide clarity for people?
Well, the first thing we have to do is get either back in touch with self or actually learn who we are, right? We can't make a decision when we don't actually have a connection with the person who's making the decision, right? So the sort of capital S self, our true identity, like who we really are, not the person that we have been pretending to be in order to make them love us. Not that, when you've been in a relationship with a narcissist, we spend so much time and energy bending ourselves into pretzels to try to be what we think will make them love us. And the goalpost is constantly shifting. So we lose all sense of self. And, that's by design, right? They don't want us in touch with our higher self. They don't want us to have self-esteem because that, kind of ruins their ability to control us. And so the whole design of this is to rid us of our self-esteem, to break us down. Like, we all say that we felt like a shell of our former selves. I used to say that I felt like a head on legs, right? I had this part of me was just, there was no connection. And so the first thing we have to do is connect with that, really connect with self. And that's made more difficult when you're still in this relationship. Like, it's a bit of a catch-22 when you're with someone who's actively working to disconnect you from that. But if you have enough, like if you're already reading this book, if you're already asking this question, if you're in this group, if you're in, listening to this podcast, my podcast, whatever it is, right? If you're doing this work, there's already a sense of awareness. And so you might just need to kind of emotionally disconnect for a minute, like as much as possible, so that you can keep your focus on yourself. And, I'm not even asking you to connect with yourself so you can make a decision. For now, we're just going to we're going to connect with your inner guide, your intuition, your sense of self that knows the answers. And it's scary. And these are not answers that you necessarily want, right? They're answers that you crave, but then you hear them and you're like, that's not the one that I wanted. But we've got to sit in that discomfort for a bit. Because once you're grounded in self, and my whole first part of this book gives you exercises to do. I have tons of resources. And if, once you've done that and you move into the education and the understanding about narcissism or, various forms of abuse, or just if you're not happy, right? It's okay. Then you've got that grounded part of yourself hearing this information and observing the actions of your partner in a way that like you have the ability to, it lands somewhere healthy that can discern, right?
Yeah, if I can dissect something that you just said, I see a lot of people trying to skip to the head piece or
That's
skip
right.
over the body piece.
That's right.
The body piece is where you feel the pain.
That's right. 100%.
And as I heard you describe that, I was like, yes, that's right. And this is usually what goes wrong, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But here's the thing, right? Like if you've been agonizing over this for 4 or 5 years, as so many people do, you've been thinking about it for a long time, right? The headpiece isn't working, right? It's the headpiece is not getting you anywhere. So we have to look, trauma lives in our body. We know this now. Connecting with, doing grounding exercises, meditation, like all of those things that just sort of quiet us in our body and feel shit, which we don't want to do. Like, we don't want to feel this. Of course not. And also, you may need to do it safely with a somatic therapist, having somebody there safely to guide you through it might be really important. But yes, you're absolutely right. Right. Our best thinking is not working, is not getting us clarity. It's it's what keeps us jumbled. We spend so much time focused on them and what they're doing, and is what they're doing bad enough? Does it rise to the level of, well, it doesn't quite fit the piece. Like, I hear that it looks like this, but mine's a little bit different. So is it really right? We're so focused outwardly, and it's killing us. We have to turn that inward first. And then we can start to look at the other stuff because we have new lenses on.
Well, and I think about it too, if this was a child, right? Because really what we're talking about is bullying, right? So there was
right, sure.
Who was 10, 11 at school, and it's like, this friend is making you miserable every day, bullying on the internet. And then you're like, well, it's not quite this. Like, I go home and cry every day, and, but she didn't call me a bitch. She just said that I was fat in my jeans. Like, I mean,
yeah, 100%.
Take yourself out of it and see if this was happening to someone else or happening to a child and the exact same thing. And they were just like, I just need to read more articles about bullying, and then I can change the bully. And you just go, oh, this is heartbreaking. Like,
right. Exactly. Heartbreaking.
And not working.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. That's so well said. It's so well said, Sarah. It's really like because it is like kind of a form of insanity, right? A bully's a bully. You got to stay away from a bully.
Yes, and an understandable one, and we go back to the
100%. Totally, right? Like, I'm not saying like you're insane and this is not a judgment. Like,
I know, yes.
Again,
we were all insane, but we'll say it that way.
We were all insane. Listen, I was insane for 10 years and beyond, like 100%. But the other thing about it, is that, you have to remember that this is the design of the abuse. Right. So it's so not your fault, because number one, that's human nature. Like, you signed up for a loving partnership. You signed up for marriage, and your definition of marriage is, for most of us, love and partnership and an exchange of energy and empathy and kindness and like my best friend.
Yeah.
They signed up for something different.
A slave.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, an emotional slave for sure, right? And sometimes physical, like all right. And so it's really, really hard to wrap your head around that. Like, really hard, and for good reason. I don't want to wrap my head around that. That's awful. And by the way, if you said that to them, they're not going to be like, right, because the trap is that we gain this information and this insight about them, and what we want to do is go back to him and be like, hey, you know what? I think you signed up for a slave and I wanted partnership. They're not going to be like, oh, you're right, I did sign up to. No. Again, the data, right? What? If you filter your entire relationship through a different lens, does it make more sense?
And I think that's so crucial. It's like to step out of yourself. Like, this was happening to someone else, or happening to your child, or, happening to someone you really care about. It's like, this is, and I want to say, because I think people get that advice, like, marriage is hard. You just need to stick it out. And it's like, when people say marriage is hard, what they're talking about is maybe, having to make some compromises, or having to think about someone other than yourself, or having to, there's hard times in people's life. It's like, life is hard and you're facing marriage together.
Right. Right.
The marriage is making your life hard. Like, those are two
very different things. Right. I mean, I have all these, a lot of women who will say like, I'm just so miserable, but my husband says that I'm just a miserable person. And like, that's why I'm so miserable. Like, I'm just miserable. It's not the relationship making me miserable. It's not him making me miserable. I'm just a miserable person. And, when you start to dissect that, first of all, like, if I went to a loving spouse who was, in part, like, say you, Sarah, if you went to your husband and you were like, hey, you know what? I'm really unhappy with this aspect of our marriage. He would go, oh shit. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. What do we need to do?
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever want you to feel that way. Mm-hmm. As opposed to, I don't know, not my problem. You're just a miserable person. Like, just that response in and of itself is so dismissive and awful, right? And that is right. But like, listen, living with a narcissist causes all sorts of mental health and physical health problems, right? The cases of autoimmune disease in women in abusive relationships is really
I just want people to hear what you were saying right now, because it is so well documented, and it's just like, this is real. And when people
that's right
are giving you advice, family members or whoever, and it's like, I do not think little kids dream of having a mother with an autoimmune disease, right? So when you think about staying for your kids, I want you to think about leaving for your kids, like, as clear as I can say it, like screaming. Can you like dive into that? That is
absolutely. I left for my son. I literally I had this moment. I'll never forget it. I was staring in my closet, just sort of like vacantly, which is like how I had become at that point. And it suddenly hit me. And I was like, oh my God, I have to leave for him. Everyone tells me I have to stay for him. I have to leave for him because he's going to become an abuser. He was 3 years old. I was like, he's going to become an abuser. He's going to pick women who are codependent and sort of meek and, trying to, whatever I had become at that point. And my 3-year-old is going to be an abuser. And in that moment, I was like, oh shit, I'm out. I'm fucking out. Like, absolutely no question. And that was the moment for me. But in terms of the autoimmune stuff, we have chronic health issues because the amount of stress hormones that are constantly pumping through our systems when we are being abused, manipulated, gaslit, right? This is just the mental gymnastics. We're so stressed out. If you are nervous and scared every single time your spouse comes home because you're not sure who's going to walk in the door, if you have the experience like I did, where you have a play date and everyone's having fun, and then you see his car pull up in the driveway and you're like, oh, fuck, everyone's got to go. Everyone's got to go. Everyone's got to go. Like, the amount of stress that causes, the stress hormones coursing through your system build up to the point that it causes autoimmune diseases, right? The amount of cortisol, like an overabundance of cortisol, and all the other stress hormones are at the root cause of many autoimmune disorders. This is why people with a history of trauma end up with a lot of autoimmune issues, right? It's the trauma. Sometimes it's your body. Like, there's a lot of chronic illness that has nothing to do with this, and there's a lot that does. And I know for me, as soon as I left, I had chronic back pain for 3.5 years, and when I left, gone. I hear it from women, chronic depression, chronic anxiety, autoimmune stuff, sleeping all the time, all that, gone.
But I think if you said to the average person, do you think stress is correlated to illness? They would say yes. And it's like, do you think your marriage is causing you stress? Yes. Do you think your marriage could cause illness? I don't know. It's really very painful to connect all those dots.
It really is. It really is. Yes.
Yeah. And if you're always walking on eggshells, your child is probably walking on eggshells, and then that's their whole life. Even if you get a divorce and it's 50-50, it is 50% of a life of peace that you can provide your child.
That's right. That's right. I say it all the time. When you have two homes, right? even if they're in this toxicity 50% of the time, which we know they probably will be because the way the family court system is at this point, we're working on it. But they have a safe place to land. They have a place for their nervous system to decompress 50% of the time. And not only that, you give them the gift of perspective. They are now able to discern the difference between stress and safety. And that gives them the opportunity to choose later down the line. When they're in the stress 24/7, that's love. When they're being abused, you're being abused, everyone's stressed out, everyone's walking on eggshells. And then you also say, oh, but daddy loves you, or like mommy and daddy love each other. Then you are cementing in their subconscious stress, eggshells, abuse, and love.
And it's like a goldfish swimming in its own water. If the water's always
right. Right. They don't. Right.
If there's at least two situations that it's like,
yeah,
oh, this is what it feels like for people not to be screaming. This is what it feels like to feel safe. This is what it feels like. I mean, it's a gift to your children.
It is a gift.
Your children. Oh,
it is a gift.
Well, your book sounds like it's going to be a gift for a lot of people. Why don't you tell us where they're going to be able to find the book? Tell us about your podcast so they can. Yeah.
Woo. So the D word, making the ultimate decision about your marriage. Isn't it pretty? It's available everywhere. I do have it. It comes out December 26th. That's the publishing date. It's available for pre-order everywhere now. If you are still in your, marriage and you don't want this showing up in your shared Amazon order history, which and that's the case with Kindle and Audible. So just be careful. I have a page on my website with all sorts of ideas for how you can get this on the DL. So my website is kateanthony.com. Click on book, or it's kateanthony.com/dword. And there's all sorts of ideas for how you can do that. I also have a bunch of book bonuses on that site, on that page. So if you just let us know that you bought a copy, you'll get access to all this, fun stuff. If you buy 2 copies, you get even more goodies. And if you are like a professional and you buy 10, or if you just want to buy it for everybody, amazing. I have a whole package of incredible bonuses for that as well. One of the things I would love is for, attorneys and therapists to have this, this is my area of expertise. This is not, when someone goes into a therapist's office and said, or a attorney's office and is sort of, divorce curious, it would be really helpful to give this book to them because that's not your area of expertise as a lawyer, right? So that's
a very expensive way to make a decision.
It's a really expensive way to make it. That's
really, really expensive way to
and ineffective, right? It's expensive and ineffective.
And ineffective. They're going to be talking to you about the law, and you're talking about being afraid for your children, and it's like German and it's
right. Well, and also this book will give you, I really do go into how divorce works and how to choose an attorney that is right for you, because you definitely need someone who understands this. And not just like, oh yeah, everyone's divorcing a narcissist, here we go again. Like there are attorneys out there who really get it. And you want to choose that attorney, you want to choose your attorney very carefully. So I would read the book first. But and so everything is on my website, kateanthony.com. I am on Instagram at The Divorce Survival Guide, and it is the Divorce Survival Guide podcast.
Yes, well, awesome, Kate. It was lovely to connect with you again. I know I'm excited about reading your book, and I know they are going to be too. So you guys check her out, and thank you for helping us become a little more toxic person proof.